I found the hotel keycard in my wife's coat pocket while looking for breath mints. Room 412, Meridian Hotel, dated last Tuesday. The same Tuesday she'd supposedly been at book club, discussing some romance novel she couldn't stop raving about. My hands trembled as I stared at that plastic rectangle. 8 years of marriage, and I'd never had a single reason to doubt Sarah. She was the steady one, the planner, the woman who color-coded our calendar and never forgot an anniversary. But keycards don't lie. 3 hours later, my phone rang. Emma's name flashed on the screen, Sarah's younger sister, calling at nearly midnight on a Wednesday. Before we dive into what happened next, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to follow this channel for more stories that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you.
I never meant for any of this to happen. My name is Sarah, and 8 months ago, I was perfectly content with my predictable life. Jake and I had our routines, coffee together every morning, date nights on Fridays, the same vacation spot every summer. It felt safe, comfortable. Then I met David Chen at the Morrison account presentation. He wasn't just another client in an expensive suit. When he spoke about market disruption and taking calculated risks, something inside me stirred that had been dormant for years. During our lunch meeting, he asked about my own entrepreneurial dreams I'd buried beneath mortgages and meal planning and the quiet contentment of being Jake and Sarah. "You light up when you talk about starting your own agency," he said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Why haven't you done it?" The question haunted me for weeks. Why hadn't I? Jake would have supported me, but he'd also have wanted a detailed business plan, market research, a safety net. David saw possibilities where Jake saw problems. Our second meeting was supposed to be about campaign strategies. Instead, we talked for 3 hours about everything: my college dreams of traveling through Europe, the photography portfolio I'd abandoned, the parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. When he walked me to my car, something electric passed between us. "I know this is complicated," he said, "but I'd like to see you again." Not for business. I should have said no. I should have mentioned my husband, my marriage, my carefully constructed life. Instead, I heard myself saying, "Tuesday, there's this little bookstore cafe on 5th Street. That's how it started. Innocent meetings that gradually became less innocent. David made me feel seen in ways I'd forgotten were possible. He listened to my ideas without immediately jumping to the practical concerns. He made me laugh until my sides hurt. He made me feel like Sarah again, not just half of a married couple. The first time we kissed was in his car outside that bookstore. I cried afterward, not from guilt, though that came later, but from the overwhelming realization that I'd been sleepwalking through my own life. "I have to tell you something," I whispered against his shoulder. "I'm married." "I know," he said quietly. "I've known since our first lunch meeting. You kept fidgeting with your wedding ring." The affair, though we never called it that, became my secret universe. Tuesday and Thursday evenings transformed from book club obligations into stolen hours of feeling fully alive. David introduced me to restaurants Jake and I would never try, art galleries he'd find too pretentious, ideas that challenged everything I thought I knew about what I wanted from life. We started meeting at the Meridian Hotel when coffee shops began to feel too public, too risky. Room 412 became our sanctuary. David would arrive first, I'd follow 20 minutes later, and for a few precious hours, I could pretend I was someone different. Someone brave enough to chase her dreams, spontaneous enough to book last-minute trips to wine country, passionate enough to risk everything for love. Because that's what it was, love. Not the comfortable, predictable love I shared with Jake, but something fierce and consuming that made my heart race every time my phone buzzed with David's messages. "I want to build something with you," he told me one evening as we lay tangled in hotel sheets. Not just a relationship. A life. A business. Everything. That's when I knew I had to choose. The planning began that night. I researched apartments, calculated finances, rehearsed conversations I'd never wanted to have. David talked about relocating his firm's operations, about opportunities in emerging markets, about the consulting agency we could build together. My sister Emma started asking questions around month 6. She'd always been perceptive, and I was getting sloppy, coming home with unfamiliar perfume, forgetting details about book club discussions, smiling at my phone in ways that had nothing to do with Jake. "You seem different," she said during one of our coffee dates. "Happy, but also distant." Happy, but also distant. I deflected, changed the subject, but Emma's words lodged themselves in my chest like splinters. Was I distant? Was I becoming someone Jake wouldn't recognize? The night Emma followed me to the hotel, I felt her presence before I saw her car in the parking garage. Sister's intuition, maybe, or guilt finally manifesting into paranoia. I almost turned around, almost told David to cancel, almost chose the easier path. But David was waiting in the lobby with that smile that made everything else fade away, and I walked into his arms knowing that my carefully constructed double life was about to collapse.
Now let me tell you Jake's side of this story. Emma? I whispered, stepping into the hallway so I wouldn't wake Sarah. What are you talking about? Emma had always been the family firecracker, bold where Sarah was cautious, direct where my wife chose diplomacy. But tonight, something fractured lived in her voice. I've been wrestling with this for weeks, Jake. Weeks. But I can't. I can't watch you live this lie anymore. My bare feet found the cold kitchen tiles. Outside, streetlights cast long shadows through our bay window, the same window Sarah and I had picked out together 3 years ago when we bought this house. When we planned our future, Sarah's been meeting someone, Emma continued, her words coming faster now like water through a broken dam. Every Tuesday and Thursday. She tells you it's book club, right? The air left my lungs in one sharp exhale. Book club. Sarah's sacred book club that she'd defended fiercely whenever I suggested we do something else on those evenings. How do you? Because I followed her last week. Emma's confession hung between us like smoke. God, Jake, I followed my own sister because something felt off. She's been going to the Meridian Hotel downtown. Same man every time. Dark hair, expensive suit, drives a black BMW. I gripped the counter until my knuckles went white. The ceramic fruit bowl Sarah had insisted on buying at that little artisan shop in Vermont suddenly seemed like evidence from another life. Everything felt distant, unreal. There's more, Emma whispered. Jake, they've been together for 8 months. 8 months. I did the math involuntarily. 8 months ago, Sarah had joined book club. 8 months ago, she'd started working late more often. 8 months ago, she'd begun suggesting I spend more time with my friends, that we didn't need to be attached at the hip. The next morning arrived with cruel normalcy. Sarah hummed while making coffee, kissed my cheek before heading to her marketing job downtown, reminded me she had book club that evening. What are you reading this week? I asked, hating myself for the test. Oh, it's this new thriller everyone's raving about, she said without missing a beat. Something about psychological manipulation. The irony tasted bitter in my mouth. I called in sick to work. Spent the day researching private investigators, then talking myself out of it, then researching again. By afternoon, I'd made a decision that felt both necessary and devastating. I would see for myself. Tuesday evening, I parked 3 blocks from the Meridian Hotel, hands trembling as I adjusted my baseball cap and sunglasses. I felt ridiculous, like a character in a bad spy movie. But when Sarah's silver Honda pulled into the valet circle at exactly 6:15 p.m., ridiculous transformed into something much darker. She emerged wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for her birthday. The one she said made her feel beautiful. The one she'd worn on our anniversary dinner just 2 months ago. The man who met her in the lobby looked exactly as Emma had described, tall, confident, expensive. But what Emma hadn't mentioned was how Sarah's face lit up when she saw him. That radiant smile I thought was reserved for me. The way she melted into his arms like she was coming home. I watched them disappear into the elevator, and part of me died in that hotel lobby. But I wasn't done. Over the next week, I became someone I didn't recognize, a detective in my own marriage. I discovered the credit card statements hidden in her jewelry box, dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together, hotel charges, gifts I'd never seen. The most damaging evidence came from her laptop. She'd forgotten to log out of her email, and there it was, months of correspondence with David Chen, a venture capitalist she'd met at a conference. Their messages read like love letters, full of inside jokes and future plans and intimate details about their relationship that made my stomach turn. "I can't wait until I can leave him," one message read. "Jake's sweet, but he's so predictable. Safe. You make me feel alive again." I confronted her on a Sunday morning. We were in our garden, Sarah's garden, really surrounded by the roses she'd planted our first spring in the house. She was wearing my old college sweatshirt, hair pulled back in a messy bun, looking exactly like the woman I'd fallen in love with. I know about David. For words that shattered everything. Sarah's watering can slipped from her hands, soaking the mulch around her feet. For a moment, she looked genuinely surprised. Then something shifted in her expression, relief, maybe, or resignation. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Emma told me. Then I saw you together." "How?" Sarah sank onto our garden bench, the same one where she'd said yes when I proposed 2 years ago. "I never wanted you to find out this way." "Is there a good way to find out your wife is having an affair?" She flinched at the word affair like I'd struck her. "It's not, it's more than that, Jake. I love him." Those 4 words hurt worse than everything else combined. I could have handled lust, a moment of weakness, a mistake. But love? Love meant our entire marriage was the lie. "How long?" I asked, though I already knew. 8 months. We met at the Morrison account presentation. He was the client. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were for me or for herself. I tried to fight it, Jake. I really did. But being with David, it's like I remembered who I used to be before I became half of Jake and Sarah. The cruelest part was that I understood. We'd settled into comfortable routines, predictable patterns, date nights every Friday, the same vacation spot every summer. I thought that was happiness, stability. "Are you leaving me for him?" Sarah nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I already found an apartment. I was going to tell you next week." Next week. She'd been planning her exit while I'd been planning our future. The divorce was surprisingly civil. Sarah took her things on a rainy Thursday while I was at work, leaving behind only the roses she'd planted and a letter explaining everything I already knew. She was sorry. She never meant to hurt me. She hoped someday I'd understand. Emma called me every day for the first month, apologizing for being the messenger, checking that I was eating, sleeping, surviving. "I keep thinking I should have told you sooner," she said during one of those calls. "Or maybe I should never have told you at all." "You did the right thing," I assured her, though some days I wasn't entirely certain. 6 months later, I ran into David at a coffee shop downtown. He was alone, looking tired, scrolling through his phone with the defeated expression of a man whose perfect romance had collided with reality. I almost felt sorry for him. "Jake," he said when he noticed me, I wanted to reach out, to apologize." "For what? Taking my wife or making her happy?" He seemed surprised by my response. "Both, I guess." "Don't apologize for making her happy," I said, and meant it. "She deserves that." What I didn't tell him was that Sarah had called me the week before. Their relationship was struggling under the weight of real-world pressures. David traveled constantly for work. Sarah missed the stability she'd had with me. The passionate affair was proving difficult to sustain as an everyday partnership. But that wasn't my problem anymore. A year later, I'm dating someone new. Rebecca is nothing like Sarah, spontaneous where Sarah was methodical, adventurous where Sarah was cautious. She's teaching me that predictable doesn't have to mean boring, and that stability can coexist with excitement. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Emma never made that call. If I'd continued living in ignorant bliss while Sarah planned her escape. Would that have been better or worse? I don't have an answer. But I know this: betrayal isn't always about the lies people tell you. Sometimes it's about the truths they never intended you to discover. And sometimes the most devastating betrayal is when someone you love falls out of love with you so gradually, so quietly that you never see it coming. The sister's call didn't destroy my marriage. It revealed that my marriage was already destroyed. If this story hit you in ways you didn't expect, make sure you're subscribed for more real stories about love, loss, and the complicated truths we tell ourselves about the people we think we know. And remember, Sometimes the most important conversations happen at 2:47 a.m.